Hello, hello. Welcome to the show, everyone. Good to see you. How you doing, Trevor? You weren't here with us for the last, 2 weeks. Yeah, it's been 2 weeks.
Yeah, I've been been a bit busy, and of course, having having 6 kids, one of them gets sick, and everybody gets sick, and so I spent the last week getting over COVID and things like that. But here we are again. So yeah, it's good to be back, and I should be back here next several weeks, I hope. So shouldn't be a problem. But yeah, we went out and did a little hunting with my brother-in-law. Got him a bighorn sheep out in Oregon, and that was pretty fun.
Nice.
And then I had to work last week, unfortunately, and real life.
Well, we're glad you're here with us today. We're all back. Well, Lynda will be back next week. Lynda is touring Scotland, Ireland, and London.
I hope it rains every day, Lynda. No, I'm just
No.
kidding. I'm not jealous at all.
She actually got to see Greybrier. She's been to a few places, so good on her. So exciting.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to.
Awesome.
What's that?
Well, she was sending us pictures and stuff.
She was sharing, which was wonderful. I want to bring on our guest because I'm so excited to have this wonderful gentleman on our show. I've had the pleasure of knowing Chris for quite a few years now, and I can't even tell you what an amazing man he really is. I want to welcome Chris McKinnell to the show. And Chris, how you doing? Here we are. Hi, Chris. How you doing?
Hey, good evening. Thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it.
Oh God, you know what? Every time I can have you on a live show, it just makes me so happy. So, how are you doing? How's everything?
Doing great. Couldn't be happier.
Good. So for those that don't know, Chris is the founder of the Warren Legacies Foundation. He's also the grandson of Ed and Lorraine Warren. And yeah, you've been a paranormal investigator yourself for many, many years.
Since 1981.
Wow.
Yep. Started going on lecture tours with my grandparents back in the 70s. Had some experiences with them even back then. Heck, I was actually locked in their museum when I was 3 years old one night.
Oh my God. Okay, so you got to tell us about that. You got to tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, it's not much of a story. My sister is 10 months younger than me, and for some reason she thought it'd be funny as heck, and she locked me in the museum. She had to be 3 years old. I don't know how she did it.
I already like your sister. That's like right up my alley. That's exactly what I would do. So, like, have fun. Bye.
Annabelle had just come home. That whole thing with my mom being chased around by Annabelle. No, please. My mom's not a psychic. She's never had. I think she's probably been in the museum twice in her entire life. She's terrified of the paranormal. No, that was me that got locked in the museum. Luckily, I started screaming my little head off. It was little at one point. And my grandfather was in the back in his office, and he came running immediately.
Oh, I can, well, it's a good thing that you didn't decide to take Annabelle out for a cuddle or something to keep you safe.
Oh, no, you got to understand how scary looking that museum is. I mean, there are things in there that no 4-year-old should be staring at.
They should not be subjected
to tiger, fetish dolls from Africa, some pretty hideous things.
Oh God, yeah. Hey, I can imagine.
So,
yeah.
No, Kathy, how did you and Chris meet? Where did you guys meet at?
How did we meet, Chris?
It's been, I can't recall how many years, because it's got to be at least 9 or 10 years. We met online, of course. Probably through Facebook. I was getting the Warren Legacy Foundation started. Right. And you and I had chatted, and you ended up becoming a member for quite a number of years.
Yeah.
So I'm going to guess that's how.
I think that we did kind of a couple of cases together to some degree, and did some remote work And yeah, we just kind of went from there. So
Yeah, there's been a lot of remote work, unfortunately. I do, because the foundation serves the entire world. We do a lot of our work remotely. We don't have boots on the ground everywhere, obviously.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm pretty busy helping people here in Paraguay. I'm in the city of Asuncion. They don't really have a tradition of accepting the paranormal here. And because of my reputation, because of my family's name, my coming here has opened up doors like it always does everywhere I go.
Right.
And I'm overwhelmed by the number of people who are looking for help.
I can imagine.
Can you tell us a little bit about the Warren Legacy Foundation? What is it? What is it that you guys do?
Oh, sure. We are a worldwide organization of volunteers. We help people for free and anonymously. I don't believe in publicizing the private details of the people we serve. Now, obviously, if we're talking about things like the Amityville case or another case that's been written about in books, I don't really have any problem whatsoever in talking about those. But otherwise, no, I've seen the damage that publicity can do. But we're an organization of well over 100 people all around the world who volunteer their services. And we've got doctors, archbishops, priests, pagans, psychologists, engineers, you name it. They come from all walks of life. Some of them are only consultants. Obviously, we want those people to help when, for instance, last week, I had a case come up here in Asuncion. It's the very first time. I've had over 11,000 cases.
Wow.
It's the very first time I've had to deal with dissociative personality disorder. And this poor young man, he had been kidnapped coming out of church when he was 14 years old. He was raped by several men, ended up contracting HIV.
Oh.
Yeah, he's 23. And his personality splintered into well over a dozen. And he went for hospitalization. Then he even had a Catholic exorcism. I can't imagine how that could have happened. I mean, normally the Catholic Church is pretty good about ruling out the psychological first. Yeah.
Like that's the first thing that they usually look into is the psychological.
Yes.
Or medical in general, psychological or physical.
Right. And I do want to point out to people who might be troubled by the paranormal, just because you have a mental health issue doesn't mean the paranormal isn't bothering you. The truth is we're looking for those underlying issues that have made you vulnerable to a negative manifestation. Yeah. And we deal with it all holistically. So if you're, let's say you're bipolar or you have schizophrenia, don't be afraid to reach out just because you think we're going to judge you as, oh, you're just crazy. Yeah. No, not at all. We do understand this phenomena is real and we're there to help.
Yeah. And it's like we talk about on my team and stuff. It's like, even if it's not something paranormal or whatever, you're still experiencing something. You're going through something, maybe it is paranormal, maybe it isn't paranormal. It doesn't matter. You're still going through something. If we can offer some form of comfort, some form of help or guidance or whatever, to me, that's the essence of what we do. Right. I mean,
amen. I don't even call myself a paranormal researcher. I'm a paranormal social worker. I will hook you up with the services you need, period. I don't care if it's paranormal. If you're a person in need, well, God has been sending down one message through every single religion, and that's treat everybody the same, love everybody. And I'm not going to turn you away just because. Good.
That's awesome. I love to hear that. If it's okay to ask, and if it's not, you don't have to answer. But I'm curious to know. So you're working all over the world. You do your investigations and things for free. How are you guys funded?
Actually, I was building houses for the Israeli army back when I was 26 years old with a Palestinian work crew during the first Palestinian uprising. Wow. And I fell off of a building. And for a more than 2 decades, I kept working, but over time it got worse and worse and worse. Now I'm on disability, and it's not much, but it's enough for me to fund the foundation because we're volunteers, and enough for me to live overseas. I can't afford to live in the United States. Not that I want to be quite honest. I love my life. I wouldn't change it for anything.
So self-funded, that's amazing. Good for you. And then you have a series of volunteers, I take it, that you...
Yeah, everyone is a volunteer. And they are the most amazing people. I am so blessed. Now, we are very selective about who joins the foundation. It's a long process. There are background checks. Because for us, this is God's work. Okay? And I'm not talking about Christian or Jewish or Muslim or anything like that. I'm a pastor who doesn't even believe in a religion. Whatever your route to God is, God bless you for it. And mine was recognizing my ignorance and understanding I can't fathom what God is. So I have to have faith in that his perspective is greater than mine. So I find that as long as your heart is open and you're practicing goodwill toward others, you're getting as close to God as possible.
That's great, Chris. I love that.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree. So with the foundation, so basically people contact you and you just check to see if you have people in that area, or how does that work?
Oh, no, not necessarily. It doesn't matter where they are.
Okay.
We don't have anybody in China right now, but if we get a contact from China, we're still going to help.
Absolutely.
It's not about location. There's an awful lot we can do. We've got amazing psychics who can project themselves into a home to help. We've got plenty of other ways of helping. Believe me.
I believe I did that for the foundation a couple of times too, is the projection. Yeah, that's, I did.
It's amazing how much can be accomplished.
Yeah.
Even remotely. And it's important that people understand more often than not, what you're dealing with isn't what you believe it is.
Yeah.
And it isn't nearly as bad as you think it is. I had a woman contact me a few days ago. She's been depressed, very unhappy. She used to be a happy person. She can't hold a relationship, and she's afraid she's under possession. I was like, you're not under possession. Look, I'm an exorcist, but I've only had 12 exorcism cases in my entire life out of 11,000 cases. If it was possession, I promise there would be no doubt at all that that's what it was. It's an overwhelming experience. And I'm not saying that it's what people think it is either, because I don't believe in the Judeo-Christian idea, the Christian idea of demons. I've seen these things manifest all around the world differently, and they manifest according to our cultural and spiritual beliefs.
Right.
So that tells me a little something that perhaps if you're going to study demonology, and boy, this is going to be controversial, don't do it like my grandfather, who was a religious demonologist. Mm-hmm. Yes, that's terrific if you're dealing with Catholics. But it isn't effective in really understanding what you're dealing with. Yeah. Every single religion in the world has exorcism rites, has rituals for limiting spirits and what they're capable of doing. And they all work. God doesn't really care about the religion. Use your religion as a focus for your faith, and it will be effective.
Right.
Yeah, we kind of think along the same lines, Chris, because it's when we deal with trying to help out clients that have unwanted hauntings and trying to help them understand how to make, how to get things under control in their home. It's different for everybody. And it's all about your belief system, 100%. It's basically, it comes down to your faith and what you believe in it. If I send a Protestant Baptist preacher to a Catholic's home to try to cleanse their spirits, it's not going to work. Because
the family has to have faith.
It doesn't work. Yeah, and so on the same thing, if somebody believes in and they're more of the the pagan rites with, the burning sage and, those different types of things that they like to do. If that's what you believe in, put stock in whatever it is that you got to do to empower yourself to get her. Because that's what it comes down to itself. That
Right.
self-empowerment, that battle of will, so to speak. And so that's great to hear. I think that's fantastic. So.
You know something, Trevor? One thing that I found very interesting, and I only discovered this a few years ago. Well, all right, maybe a decade ago. How every single religion in the world has ways of setting spiritual guidelines, but you don't even need the religion to do that. For instance, if I say to you, back up, your immediate reaction is going to be to back up because you're going to, most of us listen.
Yeah.
If you're dealing with a human spirit, lay down the rules. If you're a psychic and you're being bothered all the time, chances are it's not that you're haunted. It's your aura burns more brightly than an ordinary person's. You're a lighthouse in the darkness for these lost souls. And so you have to make it clear every single day, look, I'm not available to you. You may not bother me when I'm at work. You may not bother me when I'm asleep. You want to bother me? And then you set rules. You say, when I light a white candle on my kitchen table and I say, now you may come to me only while I have the candle lit, then you're opening yourself up for that moment only. And you're setting those guidelines. And it works.
As a psychic medium, I experience a lot of clients that will struggle with especially if they're, that will be empathic and they'll be, well, I can't do this and I can't do that and I can't do this. And I said, look at me. I am not bothered by things day in and day out. I am bothered, or I allow them to come through when I say they can come through. And if they're not allowed through, they're not allowed through at that time. So I'm not walking around, going, oh, there's one and there's one and there's one. It doesn't happen that way. It comes through when I'm doing a session with somebody, or when I'm on an investigation, or when I'm open to it. That's your allowance. This is your time. You can come in at this time, but when I shut that door, I shut that door. That's the end of it. Because I need my own life. I have my own life. I want to go do my own life, and I don't need to be bothered by the dead or, by other things, whatever they may be. Right. And so a lot of people, I think to some degree though, and you can, you can tell me if I'm wrong, if you've not experienced this, but I do find, and we've talked about this on the show before, where we do find with some people, they want to be haunted. It's almost like they have that. You try to explain to them, look at this. This is not what it is. And it's like you said, it's not as scary as it's being portrayed, and we've experienced that before, and where you've had to say, look at, what, this is not what you're thinking it is. Like, this is literally the wind coming in through the window and slamming a door, or this is this, or this is that. And you might be dealing with some other issues.
It's just dust. It's not an orb. It's just dust.
Right. It's just dust. It's not an orb. And do you guys experience that a lot, or do you get a lot of that in the foundation, or does that happen frequently, or is that something that you have?
And the thing I tell people is, just because you hear footsteps or the door slams, or even God forbid your iPad flies against the wall, that doesn't necessarily mean what you're dealing with is evil or bad.
Right.
It's something trying to get your attention. Ghosts don't have fine motor control. So if they have an explosion of energy and they throw your iPad against the wall, they really are focused. Now, last week, for instance, I had 3 cases, and one of them was a woman who thought, oh my God, we've got the devil in our house. And the night before I went there, I have a very small team here in Paraguay, just 2 other people that I'm training. And she's a psychic medium. I'm a psychic medium. Now, I don't like labels. That's something I wanted to bring up as well. I find them to be self-limiting. If you're calling yourself an empath, does that mean you can't do other things?
Exactly. Well, that's exactly it, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Don't limit yourself. People want to put everything in a little box. But anyway, the night before we were supposed to go to the house, it was 11:30 at night. I was just about to get ready to go to bed. Well, I was laying in bed, ready to go to sleep. And there's 2 knocks on the door, on my bedroom door. I'm like, look, I'm going to be there tomorrow. You leave me alone. You do not have my permission to bother me tonight.
Yeah.
And that was it. And then the spirit went to one of my adopted daughters. I have a lot of adopted kids around the world, who works with me here. And I get adopted. I don't adopt them. They adopt me. And she also had a visitation from this spirit. So when we got there, the woman, of course, and her son are very afraid. But it turned out it was her father.
Oh.
And he was just, well, at the first visit, it seemed like he was just saying, look, I'm here. You're not alone. Stop grieving me. Everything's fine.
Right.
I thought, oh, that's a good message. I have no problem giving that. Very next day, she sends me a video of the door handle rattling on her bedroom door and then opening by itself. And I thought, all right, so he obviously still has more we have to talk about. So I went back and I'm sitting up in the master bedroom alone. And he's saying, there's danger, there's danger, there's danger. I'm like, I can't just tell her there's danger, which is something I caution anybody who's receiving message from spirit.
Yeah.
Don't give unsolicited messages to the living. They may not be ready for that.
Yeah.
Especially don't give.
Or at the very least, be specific. Like what is the danger? Like we need specifics here.
Yes.
You know?
So I decided, all right, you know what? I'm going to do a spiritual cleansing, but I'm going to make an exception for you, one spirit. You're welcome to stay. So I did the spiritual cleansing. As I'm going around, I'm noticing that there's this giant beer bottle in the refrigerator. There's a little bar. And I'm like, my question all of a sudden was, ma'am, do you have a drinking problem? You really shouldn't be drinking much in this house. You're going to open yourself up to something else. And she said, no, not me. I don't drink at all. Well, wait a minute. Do you have a boyfriend or an ex-boyfriend?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and he's very violent. And that's when the pin dropped. Oh, that's what he's warning me about. Turns out this guy is a predator. He's threatened her life. He's threatened her son's life. He used to hurt them tremendously. He's now got a 21-year-old girl he met in church that he's abusing. But at the same time, contacting her, asking for money, demanding money. And when I said, look, your father's warning me about this man. He's very dangerous. Do you have a gun? Now, I'm somebody I'm not a gun owner. I'm not into guns. My dad was. But even here, I felt like this is something you need.
Yeah.
And she said, as a matter of fact, I do, but it's not in the house. I said, you need to get it and bring it home. And I looked at the 14-year-old and I said, you need to understand, that's like having a poisonous snake in the house. You don't touch it until you're taught how to touch it.
Yeah.
But she got the gun and I said, you need to block this guy. And she played messages from his mother screaming about how she's destroyed her family and this poor boy, this poor man, et cetera, et cetera. And it's obvious there's something really unhealthy there. And I'm really happy. But once he blocked, and he knew about me from the first visit. She had posted a picture of me in her house and he went ballistic, wants to meet me, threatening me. When she blocked him online, he got a hold of someone else's phone and threatened to run over her mother. So we got the police involved.
Yeah.
But that's just a simple case of a ghost that they were afraid of who was actually there trying to help.
Yeah.
People always ask me what's the scariest thing I experience, on investigation. I always say it's the living.
Amen.
So
That's
the scariest thing out there is just, yeah.
There's nothing that living human being, there's nothing that any spirit can do that a living human being couldn't do far worse.
Yep, exactly. So,
we don't need demons. We got them already.
We already got them.
We already walk the earth.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. But on that note, let me ask you, what is one of the most what is one of the cases that really rattled you, or really kind of, I guess, at the end of the night, let's just put it this way, and not literally, but there's been cases where, at the end of the day or whatever, you go home and you're sitting there and you're like, holy shit, did that literally just happen? And it rattles you. It gives you that little bit of a, like, wow, and it.
Well, yeah, there have been 3 cases that resulted in death. Okay. The first one I'll save for a moment, but one was just a few years ago where a damaged young man, mental health issues, a team went in, and I'm sure they were well-meaning. Well, I shouldn't say a team. A psychic medium went in and said, oh, you've got 72 legions of demons attached to you.
Oh.
And he committed suicide.
Oh, shit. Yeah, that's horrible.
Yeah. So that was one. Another one was a man, he was Puerto Rican, Catholic, and the Catholic Church was already involved when he got me involved.
Yeah.
And they had already done their due diligence. They realized, oh my goodness, yeah, this man is actually under possession. I watched him come under possession about 20 times in a 2-hour conversation, hour and a half, 2-hour conversation.
Wow.
I've never seen anybody come under possession that often. It was like Tourette's on steroids. And I backed away simply because the Catholic Church was already involved. The Catholic Church doesn't like publicity and doesn't like, paranormal investigators. I didn't want to endanger what was going on. They were going to do an exorcism. You're already on the right path. There's no reason for me to be involved. Unfortunately, the Catholic Church is also a bureaucracy. They didn't move fast enough. And one night, his wife came home from work. He was under possession. He said, F it. I'm just going to kill him. Oh. He ran up the stairs to the top of the stairs. He had a noose made out of an electrical cord, out of an extension cord. And he jumped off and snapped his neck.
Oh.
And 20 minutes later, the EMTs and the police were there. The body sat back up, eyes completely black, looked at the female EMT and the 2 cops in the room, said, he's ours, you can't have him, and then dropped back down dead. The 2 police officers quit.
Yeah.
But the worst was the
first. What's that? The worst was what?
The first death. I was only 20 when I worked on this case, 19 when I worked on this case, I think. If anybody has seen the movie The Nun, there's nothing true about The Nun, nothing at all. But there's except the credits at the end, where they do show clips of the exorcism of a man named Maurice Theriault.
Okay, and he's been brought up a few times in the Conjuring movies as well, right?
I believe he was in the second Nun. I haven't seen the second Nun movie. Okay. I think he's in there as well. And you're right. Actually, he's in the very first Conjuring movie while my grandmother, my real grandmother, is sitting in the audience.
Yeah. And it's funny. I actually just watched that. Oh, I think it was a couple of weeks ago. And I was like, oh, yeah. So I forgot about that. And I saw her and I was like, oh, that's so nice to see her there.
So remind me to tell you.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I apologize. No, I was just going to say, because I do forget things. Remind me to tell you about my grandmother visiting me afterwards.
Yeah, I will. Okay.
Go ahead, Trevor. I apologize.
Was Maurice, was he the one that in the movie they were doing the exorcism on, that supposedly in the movie spooked your grandmother so much that she shut herself in, didn't want to eat or drink for X amount of days or something? Was that what that was?
No. Here's what happened. Maurice was a French-Canadian farmer. He was illiterate, but he did speak French and English. And his father was a monster, an absolute monster. When Maurice was a child, he was abused terribly. One afternoon, his mom sent him out to the barn to get his father, and he discovered his father having sex with a farm animal.
Oh, that's nice.
And his father made him do it too, so that he wouldn't tell his mother.
He's a
Maurice
pleasant man.
was a very damaged person, and he wasn't the best father from what I've heard from his kids. How could he have been, actually?
Yeah.
So after the kids grew up and moved away, he was out in the fields and he started having paranormal experiences. There was a woman in white that would appear. He would feel something burning on his back, and there would be words carved in French on his back that his family would read to him, and he would have to translate because they didn't speak French. The words were, "The door is open." One afternoon, I forgot. Before this all started, he had gotten a phone call from his father, and his father said, "Maurice, I just want you to know that I love you," which is something Maurice's father had never said to him before.
Right.
And while Maurice was listening on the line, his father put down the phone, went in the next room, picked up a gun, killed Maurice's mother, and then killed himself while Maurice listened. So after this phenomena started happening, and there were some amazing things, like there was 2 pieces of wood found in the field that were glowing, and Maurice decided, I'm going to turn this into a crucifix and hang it over the bed. It disappeared that night after he put it up, but the glow stayed on the wall for a couple of weeks, I believe. And there was this Turkish coffee set, which is this really tall little coffee urn, and it's surrounded by tiny little cups, because Turkish coffee is incredibly strong. And that was balanced on a curtain rod. But now, if this is all right, there we go. If this is the curtain rod and my hand is the platter, it was balanced like this. It should have just fallen. Physics says that's impossible. So they called my grandparents. My grandparents asked me to come along with my partner, who at the time was a man named Ray Jefferson. Unfortunately, Ray's no longer with us. And my grandfather thought, I think this might be Maurice's father. So we went to the grave so that Maurice could tell him that he loved his father, that he forgave his father, and he just wanted his father to be at peace.
Right.
It was only 3 meters from him, 3 yards from him. And as I'm watching, Maurice is crying, and he's talking to his dad. And I watched Maurice get punched under the chin so hard, it lifted him off the ground and threw him back about 10 feet, flat on his back. I mean, you heard the punch. It was amazing. So immediately my grandfather said, "All right, Chris, I'd like you to stay here and gather evidence." Well, okay. I was in college at the time, so we were there when we could be there, Ray and I. And there were 2 other men as well. You can actually see the clips of the exorcism on YouTube for people who look for it. But
wow.
When we had gathered enough information, we were able to get Bishop McKinnell to come in and do an exorcism. That I will never forget that day as long as I live. My grandfather was complaining he didn't feel well as we were setting up the exorcism. And my grandmother looked right at him and she said, "Ed, why don't you have a banana? You're probably low on potassium." This is why I don't trust psychics. My grandmother was one of the best psychics that ever lived.
Yeah.
But her own emotions got in the
Took
way.
care of it. Yeah.
And she could not see he was having a heart attack right there.
Oh, no. Oh, yeah. Jesus.
So after we had performed the exorcism where he's drooling blood, his forehead cracks open. By the way, when you see that online, I was the man right in front of Maurice. I was only 3 feet away from him. And no, there was no crack in his forehead. His eyes didn't look like a snake at that particular. I had seen him do this before.
Right.
Not that time. The film, the video picked that up, even though it wasn't physically there. Now, I had that film examined by a videographer in Costa Rica about 5 years ago. And he said that 3 years ago. He said the technology didn't even exist until about 8 years ago to alter videotape like that. So what you're seeing there is an actual psychic manifestation caught on film. It's pretty amazing.
What would somebody look for if they wanted to search for it? Do you know?
Exorcism of Maurice Theriault. Theriault. Any good French Canadian would know how to spell that.
Okay.
But the thing that we didn't understand, I was starting to get an inkling that psychology was very important. Yeah. But my grandfather had a real prejudice against parapsychologists, and he would not entertain the idea of psychology being an important part of this work. At that point, you have to understand, my grandparents were not static. The first 6 years they investigated cases, they didn't believe in demons. And by the 70s and 80s, it's pretty much, if it was an over-the-top phenomena, well, it had to be demonic to them.
Right, right.
You know, my grandfather also believed that witchcraft was Satanism and that rock and roll was satanic. I missed out on an awful lot of good music in my childhood.
Yeah, that Elvis Presley, I tell you.
But the thing is, honestly, he adapted and he changed over time. Mm-hmm. You know, so when you're looking at old videos of my grandparents, please don't think you're learning. You're learning stories, but you're not learning theory.
But we all do that too. I mean, we all adapt and we all learn. And I mean, you know, even when I originally started doing readings or whatever, like you learn as you go, and you know, you adapt, I guess, but you grow. You're basically growing with each reading or with each case that you guys dealt with. They learn something new, and you know, you're able to develop a different theory, or you're able to, you know, get more knowledge or whatever it is. I think we all go through that, you know. So
this is a field of research. It's not a religion. And if you're not adapting, you're doing yourself and your clients a disservice.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But to finish, I don't want to leave people hanging on this particular tragedy. And it is a tragedy. What we didn't understand is that we needed to deal with the underlying issues that made him vulnerable. Yeah. And yes, I do believe we were dealing with his father. My grandfather believed it was demonic. I don't. I absolutely am sure it was his father, because 2 years later, we got a call from his wife, Nancy. Maurice had slipped back into the darkness. He was becoming violent. He was having episodes of possession. And she said, I can't do this anymore. And she was getting a restraining order against him. Well, one night, she came home from work. As she was getting out of the car, Maurice was waiting. He had a shotgun. He blew her arm off as she was getting out of the car, dragged her bleeding into the kitchen. She thought, this is it. I'm going to die just like Maurice's mother. Several minutes passed. I have no idea how many. Neither does Nancy, as far as I know. And at the last moment, Maurice didn't kill her. He turned the shotgun under his chin and blew his head off.
No.
So this is why we deal with our cases holistically. If we fail to do that, then we're only allowing these things to remanifest.
Yep. Super true. Chris, this is, and fortunately, for me and my team out here in Idaho, we haven't had near as many cases as you, but we haven't really had that opportunity to deal with a lot of this really, really serious stuff. Everything that
your internet's all messed up, Trevor.
Oh, I can hear him.
Oh, can you hear him? Okay, I can't hear him.
Okay, everything seems fine. I don't know what's going on. But a lot of I do get a lot of questions about self-protection and things like that. What do you do to help with your own mental health and your own spiritual well-being? How are you able to handle some of these really difficult cases?
Wow, there are a lot of different things here. One is your own mental attitude. We do not allow our membership to work on a case if they're not in the right headspace. And that doesn't just mean if they're suffering from depression. I mean, if today you've had a bad day and you're angry, no, today you sit out this investigation. This is not for you. You have to be responsible and think about, where am I right now? Number two, when you go into the home, you set up your protections before you enter. Now, that can be done in any number of ways, depending on your spiritual path. But the thing people need to understand is the ritual that you use is there to focus your clear intention and your faith to have a tangible result. It works. So I use the white light. I surround myself, I surround my team, I surround the house and the people in it. Then I will go to the doorstep. If I'm not dealing with something horrifying, I will ask for permission from the spirit first. If I'm dealing with something horrifying, I will announce my intention before I enter the house. If I think I'm dealing with something that's not going to give me permission because, well, let's be honest. If you're an asshole in life, you're going to be an asshole in death.
How many times have I said that? I love that. Yeah. That's like one of my favorite things to tell people. So this is how it works. So
it is. I mean, I had one last week. It was an evil woman who just didn't like children in the house that used to be hers. She used to threaten people with her gun, and just miserable person. I didn't ask her permission. I just said, look, this is your opportunity. I'm here to help you. If you want help, I'll help you pass over. If you've got a message, I'm here for that now, not later. You can't follow me. But regardless of whether you reach out to me and get my help, I'm doing a spiritual cleansing today, and you will no longer be welcome here. So I make it clear why I'm there every time. Afterward, I also shut everything down. I, again, surround everybody in the white light. Now, I'm a little different than everybody else as well. I carry my grandmother's rosary with me on cases. Not because I'm a Christian, but because it's a connection to my grandmother and to my faith.
Right.
And to her faith. My grandmother is with me all the time. Not all the time. She's with me when I ask her to be with me. Sometimes she's with me even when I don't ask her to be with me.
Well, that's and you actually asked us to remind you of your grandma visiting. So let's talk about that, because I had the pleasure one time not of speaking with her, but there was an email exchange. It was very quick. I had a question and somebody had suggested to contact your grandma, and she very pleasantly wrote back. And she gave me some excellent advice. And I was like, oh my, I didn't expect, honestly, I did not expect to receive an email, and whether it was actually her or an assistant, it didn't matter to me. The fact is that somebody took the time.
No, she didn't have an assistant.
Oh, and
now I remember how you met me. She told you to reach out to me.
Yes. And I'm just leaving it there because it's just a beautiful experience. And I'm going to end up crying, so I'm not going to do that.
Oh, it's okay. My grandma, she's the best, honestly. I got to live with her for the last year of her life, and
I remember that. Yeah.
The very last day, it was just she and I. Now, she had Alzheimer's. She didn't know me anymore. At least I don't think so. But I had bought her a music box that played her favorite music. And she could still sing. So we would play the music and she was singing with me and we were having fun. And she was happy. I have so many pictures and videos, not that I would ever share them publicly.
Yeah.
Because she was in bed that day, all that day. And she looked at me and she said, "I love you."
Aww.
I know. And I was sitting there that night and there were so many spirits in the room. And I was like, all right, this is it. Today's the day. I knew.
Yeah.
And I said, "Graham, can you feel them?" And nothing. But I was like, all right, they're here for you. It's okay. This is your day. And I was overjoyed. 92 years old, bad health. And she wasn't herself anymore. I wanted her to be at peace. And the moment she died, my iPad was at 35% power. And the second she died, no more power, just dead.
Wow.
And I looked up and I said, "Graham," I mean, she's right here. I said, "Graham, are you okay?" And all of a sudden, my right ear, I'm like, okay, Graham, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So then I, of course, called my mother, told her what had happened. She had me call the funeral home. And she said, "Do not tell anyone until we make a public announcement tomorrow." Mm-hmm. Well, I agreed, but then I went upstairs to the in-law apartment that I was staying in, and I was going to call my best friend. And all of a sudden, "All right, Grandma, wait till tomorrow." But she had, she and my grandfather for about a month or two later, I could hear them walking outside my bedroom. They'd walk into the living room. I'd be like, "Hey guys, okay, I'm here. Don't worry." But they would appear on cases with me. More my grandmother, to be honest. My grandfather only showed up twice. And I think he's moved on. He's no longer coming back.
Right.
But my grandmother is making up for lost time. And 3 mornings ago, now I'm working on my autobiography, and I got stuck because I'm writing about a 20-year period where I just sunk into absolute self-destruction. And I haven't wanted to re-examine that. And I was and I don't dream. At least I never remember my dreams. But I was dreaming that I was with some friends in South America, and all of a sudden we're back at my grandmother's house. I don't remember anything about the dream before I got to my grandmother's house.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden we're here. And I bring them downstairs, and I'm looking down the corridor. There's this like dungeon door kind of thing that leads to a corridor that goes to the museum. And I look in there, and it's empty. All of the paintings that my grandfather had done are gone. It's terrible. I'm so upset that this is not being taken care of properly.
Right.
And I turn around, and my grandmother's sitting in her chair. And I said, "Graham, this is terrible. What's the issue?" "Chris, sweetheart," she says, "don't worry about that. It doesn't matter." And that's when it dawned on me, wait a minute, Graham, you're dead. And I thought, okay, well, this isn't the first time she's visited me in my dream. So I'm like, okay, I got no problem. And she said, "Listen, I want to know, how are things going with the project?" And she was talking about two things. She was talking about the foundation, and she knows perfectly well how that's doing, because you have no idea how many members she's visited.
Oh, I can imagine.
Including 4 psychics on one night last year, and 2 of whom didn't even know the other 2. Wow. And it was all because I was under magic attack, and I was ignoring it. And she's like, you have to tell Christopher he needs to take care of this. He can't keep rationalizing it away. All right, Graham, I'll take care of it. And I did. And the moment I did, it was over. But in this one, she said, no, what about the other project? And the book? Yes, you need to finish it. I was like, well, Graham, I haven't felt good about it. You know, I said, no, it's very important. You need to finish the book.
Good.
And then I gave her a hug.
Aww.
And it was, oh my God, it was so good to hug her again. You know, we were in a online Christmas party when I was in Dunfermline, right near Greyfriars Bobby, by the way, which you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of the membership were online with us. And all of a sudden, I'm sitting next to a wonderful psychic medium. And all of a sudden, as I'm talking about my grandmother's favorite recipes for Christmas, the hair rises up on my arms. And I'm like, oh, and the woman looks at me and she says, yeah, she just said, your grandmother just said, Christopher, we're here.
Oh.
My grandmother's the only one that called me Christopher. So
yeah.
And that was pretty amazing.
Did she mean like we were here, like her and your grandfather, or? Yeah.
And the other time that they were together for me, I was in a sanitarium in outside of San Jose, Costa Rica. I didn't know anything about it. It's above the clouds. It's beautiful, and it's abandoned now. But it originally was a tuberculosis sanitarium, and they had a children's ward. I was being followed around by the press and the paparazzi and everybody. It's really stupid. I am not a celebrity, and I finally escaped them.
You get to make that decision.
So I finally escaped them for a moment, and all of a sudden, this little child comes up to me. Now, my Spanish was okay, so I'm trying to talk in Spanish, not realizing spirits don't give a crap what language I'm speaking.
Yeah.
At that point, I hadn't clicked yet, and I'm saying, your parents have already passed over. They're waiting for you. Just call to them. And the child was too afraid. And all of a sudden, my grandfather's over here on my right-hand side, and his arms are like this. He's like not saying anything, but the message is clear. Chris, what the hell are you doing? And my grandmother comes from the doorway on the left, and she comes right up, gets down on one knee, puts her hand out to the child, doesn't say a word. The child takes her hand, and they just walk into the light. It was like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
And finally, the final, actually, there was one other time my grandfather was there. I had just finished telling that story to a professor in Lima, Peru, during an interview. And he said, of course, are your grandparents with you now? And there was another psychic medium with me. And I said, no, they're not here. And all of a sudden, I get this hug from behind. And you should have seen the look on this poor woman's face. It was so great. I was like, oh, wait. No, they're here. So, yeah, no, my family has always had a fluid relationship with death. My grandmother's father, James Moran, when I was 16 years old, he was in the back seat of my car as I was coming home from my first party. Now, if he was there to protect me, that was not the best way to do it.
Yeah. Hello, I'm just going to appear in your rearview mirror.
Yeah, that's what it was. It was a rainy night. I was on a country road, and there's this old man in the middle of the back seat. I turned around, there's nobody there. And then the next day, out of the corner of my eye at work, I was working at the Canton Bake Shop in Canton, Connecticut. I kept seeing an old man. I'm like, why do I keep seeing an old man? This is weird. And I mentioned it to my mom about a week later. And she pulled out the family photo album, pulls out one photo and says, is this the man you saw? Yeah, who is he?
Yeah.
He had died when I was 4. I didn't even remember him.
Wow.
I said, I had prayed to your great-grandfather to watch over you because I was afraid because it was your first party and because my car was a piece of crap. So, yeah, my family, I'm very lucky that I've had those opportunities and others as well. Most people are afraid of the paranormal. The truth is, it's your fear that makes the paranormal so terrifying. It's
Absolutely.
your ignorance.
Yeah.
Most of the time, it's a beautiful experience, and it should be treated that way.
You know, it's when you have a true paranormal experience, it's something that you never forget. It's always there. It stays with you. It's one of those things where when you go back to recount it, it doesn't change. And I mean, even when we've done paranormal, investigations and stuff, sometimes with some people, they'll tell the story and then they tell a story and then but it's always different. And you're like,
the fish gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah.
No, I was just going to say that one story you told me many years ago about your dimension slip, that stuck with me more than my own stories have stuck with me. I would love to have had that experience.
It was, and it was really one of those things where it would, you remember when I said it's one of those things you go home at the end of the night and you sit there and you're like, the fuck just happened? That's exactly what it was. It was like, I walked in, I sat down, and I was just like, you're in awe. Like, you don't know if you're in awe, if you're scared, or because I think I was both. I know I was definitely scared because of what could have happened. That's what I was scared of, is like, if I went on my own, what would have happened? I was just so grateful that somebody else was there so that it wasn't an experience that I could have disappeared. I don't know what could have happened. But I remember telling my daughter, and my daughter said, I don't want you to ever go back to that house. Please don't go back to that house ever. And it was one of those places. It was one of those experiences where you're just like, holy shit.
The thing is, we have to accept how little we know. We know more about the moon than we do about the ocean. And this is just our own small little pond. If you really look at the universe, you would have to take just one tiny drop of the ocean, examine that, and say you now understand the ocean. Well, obviously you don't, And that's where we are in understanding reality. We're just starting to scratch the surface. NASA said there are more living worlds in the universe than grains of sand on Earth. There are hundreds of billions of stars in every single galaxy in the universe, and every single star has at least one planet around it.
Yeah.
How can we possibly conceptualize what reality is? How can we even get the slightest idea? I love this little parable about 3 blind men touching an elephant. One's touching the trunk, one's touching the leg, and one's touching the tail. First one says, "Oh, it's a snake." Second one, no, it's a tree. Third one, no, it's a rope. That's us trying to understand God, trying to understand reality. We're blind and we have no idea. We have to keep open minds.
Yeah. Yep. I can't say anything more than what you just said with that, because it's so true. It is so true. Like we're at some point we'll discover this, but not while we're alive.
That's exactly what I think.
Yeah. And when we get to that place,
I did ask my grandmother, by the way, is Jesus the Son of God?
Yeah.
Her answer was, "Oh, Chris." As in, Chris, it wouldn't be faith if I told you.
Oh, that's not fair.
No, but it is in a way. We're here about faith.
That's
We're
true.
not here about facts.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's
That's
very
exactly
true.
right. That's, I know your grandparents mainly, I was introduced them through the movies, and when I got into this field, I started to learn a little bit about them. But the more I actually learn about them, the real them, it would have been really cool to meet them. So I think it would have been just interesting just to sit in a room and listen to one of their lectures to
They were fantastic.
to be able to ask them questions and stuff about different things. And so I really appreciate you sharing that. So that's really cool.
Their lectures were amazing. And the best part was the question and answer period afterward. That's my favorite part of every lecture as well. My grandmother, she would talk to people for hours after a lecture. My grandfather would be like, "Come on, Lorraine, we have to go." Okay, Ed. And then blah, 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 another 45 minutes.
Yeah.
They were amazing people. They really were. They created, the word legacy is so fitting. Like, they created a legacy for all of those that are interested in the paranormal.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they did.
They truly were.
Look, the thing I need to caution people about, my grandparents were not heroes. They were people. Yeah. And I hate that today, they've taken on this mythic stature. They've been put up on pedestals, and I fight against that for myself all the time. Because once you're on a pedestal, the only thing you can possibly do is fall off of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What is it they say? Never meet your heroes. That's because we're all human. Yeah. I have more failings than you could possibly imagine. I'm just a person, and so were my grandparents. They made a lot of mistakes in life, but they tried, and they had good hearts, and they would drop everything to help someone.
They paved a path for all of us to be able to follow behind and create our own theories and look at things in our own way. And they opened up a large world for many of not only the psychics, but the investigators, the researchers, whatever it is, those of the supernatural that believe in the supernatural, that are fascinated by the paranormal. And they opened a lot of doors for all of us. And I think at the very least, we can be very grateful for them, for what they started and what they created.
Well, I wouldn't say started. There were a lot.
There were others for sure, but they brought it to a larger mainstream. What's that?
They brought it to the public light more than anyone else, I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
Especially with things like Amityville, that exploded, and it changed the way people talked about the paranormal. And look at where it's gone since then. It's amazing to me. Now, having said that, anybody who's watching these TV shows, Ghost Adventures or Ghost Lockdown or whatever they're called, this is not reality. It's reality TV, emphasis on TV. And if you're watching the Conjuring movies or the Annabelle movies, you need to understand these are fantasies based on a true story. All of the details are fake. Annabelle, none of those movies have a shred of reality to them. The Nun has no shred of reality to it. La Llorona doesn't. No. The Conjuring movies are based on true stories, but none of the details are true. Oh, having said that, my favorite scene in all of the Conjuring movies is in Conjuring 3. It's the last scene in the movie because it is accurate. It is completely accurate. It's
Which
where
scene is that?
my grandfather takes my grandmother out into the backyard with her eyes covered. And when he unveils them, the thing that she's wanted for years is waiting for her out there. It's a gazebo, a place for them to sit out and have some tea or what have you. And I cried because that gazebo is still in the backyard. It's special.
Yeah,
I thought that was like my favorite part of the movies was just the depiction of their relationship. you know, and how strong of a relationship that they had. And I always thought that was, I always really thought that was cool. So I know the rest. I knew most of them. I knew all of the stuff being Hollywooded up, and you know, because we got to sensationalize things, or nobody's gonna watch it. But I thought that the story of their personal relationship. I always hoped that was more true than the rest of it. So
she, what's her name? Vera Farmiga. She does an amazing job with my grandmother. She really got to know my grandmother, loved my grandmother, respected her, and she channels my grandmother really well. Now, Patrick, on the other hand, never got to meet my grandfather.
Yeah,
and he does a nice job, but the idea of my grandfather playing guitar and singing, and no
in the Enfield.
No. Or doing an exorcism. No, my grandfather didn't believe he could do something like that. So, although they did love to dance, so that part was true. And they were very different personalities that somehow meshed so well. You know, it was beautiful.
Oh, that's amazing. I want to thank you, Chris, so much for being on the show with us today. And what a true pleasure it is to have you on. And I just want to thank you for being here. And how do people call? Yeah, and people can contact the Warren Legacy Foundation if they need anything, if they need any help.
You can contact me directly on Facebook or on Instagram. That's Warren Files on Instagram. If people want to learn more about our cases or theories or get no nonsense explanations like you would get here, they can go to the Warren Files on YouTube as well. As a matter of fact, you can see listen to a wonderful interview with the lovely and talented Kathy Rogers on there as well.
I know that girl.
She's wonderful. I'm a big fan.
You might know her, Trevor. Maybe you met her.
Oh, okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Chris. We truly appreciate having you on the show. And thank you, everybody, for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and we will see you next week. Take care. Don't go anywhere, Chris.